Hey everyone, it's Brian and Tom from IGN. Now, we got some interesting news this week. There's a Zelda Symphony concert tour going on right now, and series producer Aonuma sort of teased at the end of a show that there is a possibility that Skyward Sword is coming to Nintendo Switch. Skyward Sword, I would say, one of the most divisive Zelda games of all time. I will spare you all the details on the news. I just want to get to the real question here. Can this game work on Nintendo Switch? Now, Tom, you love Skyward Sword.
I really do. I think that Skyward Sword gets a lot of hate nowadays.
Yeah.
But
also the day it came out.
Oh, okay, fair. No, I think Skyward Sword is one of my favorite, not like top 5, but definitely like I really like that game in terms of Zelda games. I think the world it created, the lore it created was so cool, and I even liked the motion control stuff, but that's the biggest question when coming to Switch is this game is going to be a lot harder to translate when you're not always holding a Wiimote, because the Joy-Cons, I think it would work fine with a Joy-Con,
yeah.
But is it going to work with a Pro Controller? Is it going to work on the go? All that stuff, I just don't know.
It's hard to say, right? And I think that's like where we have to kind of look at Nintendo's history with Zelda. They do have a history of porting their games, classic games, stuff like Twilight Princess and Wind Waker, which they brought over to Wii U. Wind Waker specifically had some quality of life improvements. Mm-hmm. You know, that Triforce Quest, which everybody sort of calls the most like kind of erroneous, bloated part of that game, they kind of trimmed the fat on and sped it up a little bit, which is cool.
Even stuff like the sail that made you go way faster,
yep.
And the sail that also just auto-changed the winds for you. Mm-hmm. Like those things were super nice. I wonder what those look like in Skyward Sword. It would have to be, you think, flying faster,
Flying
right?
faster. There's dowsing, which was the thing you did sort of in between temples, which was pointing the Motion Plus controller at things and basically motion, metal detecting them to put together keys to get into certain areas in the game. Something like that could be sped up. That said, I wonder if they'll just port it as is and let you use, motion control Joy-Cons to play the game, which would mean that you wouldn't be able to play the game in handheld mode. Now, Nintendo also has a history of doing that. Just recently, they put out Mario Party, which can only be played on your TV.
Right.
Same with 1-2 Switch, which was one of their flagship launch games. Very interesting to sort of be able to do stuff like that. You can't like dock the controllers in handheld mode and just play like that. I don't want to see that happen. I want to see this. I want to have multiple options for control. Modders in the PC community have actually figured out ways to port Skyward Sword to PC, where it is playable entirely using sticks. So that's doable, but will Nintendo sort of like cave on that game's real hook, which is motion controls?
The motion controls, I think almost sometimes some people forget in the controversy of like everything else and the motion controls being spotty, let's say, at the time, but that so many enemies, so many systems are so built into
puzzles, everything.
Puzzles, are slash sideways, slash diagonally, like all of that is really, really key. I think that people have proved, certainly, like you said with modding, that you don't need motion controls to do that. But whether Nintendo kind of swallows their pride enough to do that, there are examples of them both doing that and not doing that in the past. Things like the 2DS was definitely an example of Nintendo being like, you know what, people just want to play these games in 2D.
That's a really good example, actually.
But I don't know if they go that far with this. I think that in my eyes, it is more likely that they just say, hey, this is a TV-based game than they would say, hey, you can just play with sticks and buttons now.
Either way, I think it's probably the weirdest Zelda to follow up on Breath of the Wild with, because it's sort of the most linear in a lot of ways. It doesn't really have a massive open world. It is effectively a small group of hubs that are connected together by dungeons and some puzzles here and there. But it is a very beautiful game. And I don't think Wii gave it justice, because that was like a 480p console at best. And this is something that could really look good in HD. I think the game has a beautiful art style. It's very painterly, watercolory. So there's potential there. Lastly, when do you think we could see this? Because I'm hoping we get an announcement like this is at the Game Awards right now. You can play it right now, which is what they did last year with the Master Cycle stuff in Breath of the Wild.
Right, and I think that's maybe the most likely place if we're gonna see this, because they've been doing this tour for a while, right? So the fact that they're just maybe teasing this version now lends me to believe that maybe it's closer than we think.
Right.
And Nintendo has been doing stuff at the Game Awards. They do these announcements now, so maybe this is a pretty good way to follow it up.
Yeah, well, we'll find out very soon when the Game Awards hits, just a few weeks from now, even less than that. I'm Brian and that's Tom, and for all things Legend of Zelda, and especially Skyward Sword, you're already in the right place, IGN.